Looks like it worked today, so we are now live.
Great, thank you very much. We are live with the Energy, Utilities, and Technology Committee. We're here today for a work session, and you've heard me speak in the past that we have both work sessions and hearings on each bill. Today is a work session on 3 bills and then a hearing on 1. So I'll be going over the procedure for work sessions first, and then we will talk when we get to the hearing about the procedures for hearings at that point. But first off, I'm going to just go around the virtual horseshoe and ask everybody to introduce themselves. I am State Senator Mark Lawrence. I am the Senate Chair of the EUT Committee. I live in Elliott and represent the towns of Kittery, York, Ogunquit, Elliott, South Berwick, and half of Berwick. And I'll ask my House Chair to introduce himself.
Good morning. My name is Seth Berry, and I represent House District 55, which is northern Sagadahoc, 3 towns, and 1 organized township.
And then Representative Carlo, would you please introduce yourself?
Good morning. I'm Representative Nathan Carlo. I live in Buxton, and I represent District 16 in the Maine State Legislature, which is most of Buxton, all of Hollis, and a part of Saco.
Representative Foster, would you introduce yourself?
Well, good morning. I'm Steve Foster, representing District 104, the towns of Dexter, Charleston, Exeter, Stetson, and Garland.
And Representative Wood.
Good morning. I'm Barb Wood, and I represent House District 38, where it is very sunny for the first time in several days. And it is the western end of the peninsula in Portland.
Wonderful. Representative Ziegler.
Good morning. I'm Representative Paige Ziegler from District 96 in Waldo County, the 7 towns of Belmont, Liberty, Lincolnville, Montville, Morrow, Palermo, and Searsmont.
Great. Representative Grohowski.
Good morning, all. Nicole Grahowski. I represent House District 132, the people of the city of Ellsworth and the town of Trenton. And I am a Gemini, so you can refer to me as yourselves.
Thank you. Representative Kessler.
Hi, I'm Representative Chris Kessler, District 32, which is part of South Portland and a little smidgen of Cape Elizabeth.
And our House Republican lead, Representative Wadsworth.
Good morning, everybody. Nate Wadsworth, House District 70, and I represent the towns of Hiram, Porter, Brownfield, Freiburg, and Lovell.
And last but not least, Representative Cuddy.
Good morning. My name is Scott Cuddy. I represent House District 98, which is Winterport, Frankfort, Searsport, and Swanville.
Thank you. And our clerk today is Jordan Merrifield. We have 2 analysts, Deirdre Snyder and Dan Tartikoff, and they will be coming on if bills we work are their bills. So starting up this morning in my perennial role as Senator Dad, I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about Zoom and some of the effects of Zoom. When I was district attorney, we used to talk about and used to have people present to us on the effects of constant use of computers on individuals' minds and what it did to driving and distracted driving and things like that. And it was described to us that people's brains would periodically, if you sometimes see on your screen that little swirling device on your screen on your computer, it was described to us as that's what your brain does after a certain amount of time, on Zoom or on computers. And it's very serious. Your brain it's done in the back of your mind, it checks out. And for momentary lapses, you lose your present concentration. So that's why we always take breaks on this committee. I always try to give you 15-minute breaks in the morning and the afternoon, and also for lunch. But I just encourage you, when you take a break, go away, look at something else, let your brain reset itself, because it is very serious, and it is very true that periodically, if you spend too much time on Zoom, your brain will begin, without you even knowing it, just checking out and swirling to try to process information and try to reconnect itself. So that's just my lecture from Senator Dad this morning as we start off. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about work sessions. People are all familiar with work sessions. But we have work sessions, and it's a time for the committee itself to begin to discuss the bill after the public hearing. Comments have been submitted to the committee, written material, which we often will go back and review, and many people have reviewed before this work session, and many will review in the work session. And you're free to submit additional material as time goes on. It's not another public hearing where members of the attendee list do not get to speak, raise their hands, or ask to speak, or things like that. But if there are members of the committee who want or have a question for somebody in the attendees list or somebody who's not in the attendees list, we'll attempt to get them in as a panelist so the committee member and others can direct their questions to that person. At some time, we will have a motion on the legislation, and then we'll have an opportunity to debate and discuss it, and then act on the motion, should we decide to. It may be useful for me to remind people that you are on video and on audio, and your video and audio is going to be live streaming over the internet. So comments of members, the analysts, whoever may be invited to answer questions, all that will be picked up by microphones, recorded indefinitely into the future, and become part of the legislative archives. Members should always mute themselves when they are not recognized by the chair. That prevents any background noise or anything else from coming in. We have 3 bills we're going to be working on today. They are LD 1625, LD 1542, and LD 1554. And we're going to work them in that order unless anyone on the committee objects or tells me otherwise if we want to take up one earlier. So our standard procedure is when we begin working a bill, I'll announce the bill. The analyst who did the public hearing on that bill will do a presentation, a summary of what happened at the hearing, and they'll also identify to us any questions we may have had to individuals with information we ask them to bring back for the work session. And then we'll look to see if that person is available and has ready that information. We'll have an opportunity before we do that, before we go to the individuals, for you to ask the analysts any questions about their report or information or things you may have had them working on in the interim. With that, we will begin the committee work session on LD 1625, an act to increase the number of Lincolnville Sewer District trustees from 3 to 5. And I'll turn it over to our analyst, Deirdre Snyder.
Good morning. I did want to note, and we can take that from there. Jordan just sent a message that Representative Matheson had asked to go first because she had a conflict and she is in the attendee space currently. So I don't know if we want to.
So why don't I take that off the table, and we'll go directly to LD 1542, an act to repeal and replace the Kittery Water District Charter. And that is also our analyst, Deirdre Snyder. So why don't you start with that one?
Sure. Everybody see that okay?
Now we can, thank you.
Okay, great. So this bill repeals and replaces the Kittery Water District's charter, changing the boundaries of the district and making it a standard water district pursuant to the Maine Revised Statutes, Title 35A, Chapter 64. As you are aware, and at the public hearing, the sponsor prior to the public hearing distributed an amendment to the charter, which I have attached to here. And that amendment adds an emergency preamble and clause. It clarifies the territorial limits of the Kittery Water District and the terms of trustees elected after the effective date of the act. It adds provisions regarding the transition of existing trustees and the assets and liabilities of the Kittery Water District. And it also removes the referendum provision. At the public hearing, we did hear from some folks for testimony, but a lot more was submitted online. So here's a list of those who submitted testimony, and nobody testified against the bill, and the public advocate testified neither for nor against. And we'll just make one note, and this has some history, and people who were on the committee last session are probably aware. The existing charter's boundaries were not reflective of what was actually, I think, happening on the ground. And there were some issues with voting ability of all the people that lived within the district boundaries. And so this bill attempts to fix those issues. The only note I will make is that the amendment removes the referendum provision. And while there is no legal requirement that a vote be held, the prior practice for referenda on substantive changes was based on the idea that the local residents, not the state, should decide if the changes are acceptable. However, this is completely within the committee's discretion of whether they want to include a referendum or not. And it sounds like, at least from what the sponsor has said and from the testimony we received, there's been a lot of local discussions on these changes already, and discussions with the towns that are part of the Kittery Water District. At this time, the fiscal impact has not yet been determined, and I would be happy to take any questions at this time.
Are there questions for Deirdre? Seeing none, thank you. Was the bill, Deirdre, as originally submitted, it had the referendum, but
It did, and yeah,
an amendment was submitted to take out the referendum.
correct. And the emergency preamble was added so that this could go into effect quickly. I think part of that reasoning, and Representative Matheson could clarify if I'm incorrect, was election of trustees and things of that nature. And there was some agreements about when elections could occur for those trustees. So the sooner that this could be in effect, the quicker they could get to getting their full 5 trustees voted in.
Great. Representative Kessler, did you have a question for Deirdre?
No, I do not.
Okay. So at this point, I'd ask if you could beam over Jordan, Representative Matheson, and we could just hear from her. I just kind of wanted to have a couple of questions for her. I don't know if, Chris, that's what you were wanting to do. Yep, good. She's there all the way from Kittery. How are you, Christy? Oh, you need to turn on your mic. Great. Christy, do we have anybody in the attendees list from the Water District?
Looks like she's still connecting to audio.
Yep.
Christy, maybe if you turn off your video, if it's a bandwidth issue, that might help.
I can just ask the question of the people in the attendees list. Is there anybody in the attendees list from Kittery or the Kittery Water District? So I see Caroline Rose here. So why don't we bring Caroline Rose over, or Carolyn Rose? Add 2 as well, Jordan. Carolyn, if you could turn on your video.
There we are. Good morning.
So why don't you just introduce yourself to the committee and tell what function you serve on the Water District?
Certainly. My name's Caroline Rose. I am the current president for the Board of Trustees at the Kittery Water District. I actually got elected in the middle of the previous president's term when he stepped down. I've been serving for about a year. I've been attending the meetings for 2, which included the meetings and the drafts and the reworks of the previous charter predecessor to the one you have in front of you.
Okay. And just, Caroline, is everybody on the Water District comfortable with not doing the referendum on this?
Yes, yes. The referendum was really the only piece of it that people were apprehensive of.
Okay. And have you heard from the town council or any citizens that they want the referendum?
I have not.
Okay. I just want to make sure Christy and I aren't going to get yelled at after this is passed. So water districts, as you know, can be very controversial, and Kittery has been one that over the last few years has had a lot of votes and a lot of press.
Yeah, we'd like to.
Questions from the committee members for Caroline Rose, I'm sorry. Caroline Rose. Yes, Representative Berry.
It's not a question. It's more a comment. Having heard about this issue in the previous legislature, and struggled with you on the issue. I just want to congratulate you on reaching what appears to be a strong local consensus.
Thank you. And I will echo what Christy had said last week before. This is a huge effort and a lot of work from a lot of people. So much appreciated.
Any other questions for Caroline? Okay, Jordan, you can beam her back. Christy, have you made the connection yet? You can't? Okay, we'll beam you back then too as well. Do I have a motion on this? I recognize the Representative Kessler.
Yes, I would like to motion to pass as amended.
Okay, it's been moved by Representative Kessler, ought to pass as amended. Is there a second?
Second.
Representative Barry seconds. Any debate or discussion? Jordan, will you call the roll, please?
I will. So this is LD 1542 with the motion of ought to pass as amended. We'll start with Senator Lawrence.
Yes.
Senator Lawrence is a yes. Senator Vitelli is absent. Senator Stewart, I believe to be absent as well. Representative Barry?
Yes.
Representative Barry is a yes. Representative Cuddy?
Yes.
Representative Cuddy is a yes. Representative Gahowski?
Yes.
Representative Grahowski, yes. Representative Kessler?
Yes.
Representative Kessler, yes. Representative Ziegler?
Yes.
Representative Ziegler, yes. Representative Wood?
Yes.
Representative Wood, yes. Representative Wadsworth?
Yes.
Representative Wadsworth, yes. Representative Grignan is also absent. Representative Foster?
Yes.
Representative Foster is a yes. And Representative Carlo?
Yes.
Representative Carlo is a yes. That is 10 in favor of the motion with 3 absent.
So the motion prevails. I'll declare the work session on LD 1542 closed. Deirdre, am I safe to go back to the Lincolnville Water District, or are we doing the other one first?
No, you're safe. Sorry about that. I sent you the wrong list this morning.
That's okay. We all get so many texts and emails and everything. It's hard to pay attention to them all. Okay, we'll go back to LD 625 and act to increase the number of Lincolnville Sewer District trustees from 3 to 5. And I'll turn it over to our analyst, Deirdre Snyder.
So this bill increases the number of trustees of the Lincolnville Sewer District from 3 to 5. 2 of the new members are alternates who may vote only if a quorum has not yet been reached. We've received just testimony from the sponsor, Representative Ziegler, and Paul Lippman from the Lincolnville Sewer District. He wasn't at the public hearing, but he submitted written testimony online. The only note I would make on this, it is sort of an interesting proposal and unique, and I haven't been able to research every charter, so I'm not sure if this has been done before, but I think because of the voting that it's an at-large election, it doesn't pose an issue with one vote, one person, one vote sort of thing. So I think it would work. The only suggestion I might make is if going forward, you might want to just make clear in the charter itself that the quorum is 2 trustees. So while the language is clear in the bill and that what's amending the charter that additional trustees are alternates, the current charter is silent as to what constitutes a quorum. And because of this unique sort of proposal, clarity may be useful, especially when voting to authorize bonds or things of that nature. So there's no question of the vote was appropriate and had an appropriate quorum. Other than that, I have nothing else. No fiscal impact has been determined yet. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer or explain that sort of quorum issue a little further.
Thank you. Are there questions from the committee for Deirdre? Seeing none, Paige, I just ask you if you have anything you want to fill us in on.
I would like to amend the bill to say that a quorum consists of 2.
Good. Do you have anybody in the attendees list that we should bring in? Anybody from the district?
I don't.
Okay. So I will entertain a motion Somebody want to move? Representative Barry?
Yes, I move that we pass this bill. We recommend this bill reported out of committee ought to pass as amended with the amendment that Representative Ziegler just mentioned.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Seconded by Representative Wood. Any debate or discussion? Yes, Nathan.
Could you just restate that amendment, please? I was distracted.
Representative Ziegler, do you want to restate it?
That, yes, that a quorum consists of 2.
So
Perfect,
let
thank
me
you.
ask you about that. You're increasing it from 2 to 5, from 3 to 5, so a quorum of 2.
2 are alternates. So essentially what you're doing is allowing the alternates to vote if we don't reach a quorum of 2. In other words, if
Okay.
it allows them more people to draw from if they need to get to vote on any issue.
So 2 people could have the meeting and vote it out of the 5.
Yes, because there's technically 3 trustees that make up like the voting block, and the 2 additional trustees that are being added are just alternates to fill in the gaps if those 3 aren't available. So it's not
Good.
changing. At no time would it be that they would have 5 voting. It would be that you just need a
Right.
quorum of 2. That's why it was important to sort of state it because of that change, that there was no confusion that the quorum was more than 2 because you have this 5 trustees idea.
Good. Any other questions? Is that satisfactory? Nathan, do you understand the amendment? Okay. Any other debate or discussion? Jordan, why don't you call the roll?
All right. So the LD is 1625 with a motion of ought to pass as amended. We'll start with Senator Lawrence.
Yes.
Senator Lawrence is a yes. Senator Vitelli and Stewart are still absent currently. Representative Barry?
Yes.
Representative Barry is a yes. Representative Cuddy?
Yes.
Representative Cuddy is a yes. Representative Grahowski?
Yes.
Representative Grahowski is a yes. Representative Kessler?
Yes.
Representative Kessler is a yes. Representative Ziegler?
Yes.
Representative Ziegler is a yes. Representative Wood?
Yes.
Representative Wood is a yes. Representative Wadsworth?
Yes.
Representative Wadsworth is a yes. Representative Grignon is also absent. Representative Foster?
Yes.
Representative Foster is a yes. And Representative Carlo?
Yes.
Representative Carlo is a yes. That is 10 in favor of the motion with 3 absent.
Great. So the motion prevails, and I'll declare the hearing on the work session on this matter to be closed. We'll go on to our final bill for work session this morning. It's LD 1554, an act to provide climate change transition assistance for Maine's energy intensive businesses. And we'll turn to our analyst, Dan Tartikoff, to do a summary of the hearing.
Sorry, you took me by surprise there. I just sent it out, so let me pull it up.
We're just whizzing right along this morning, Dan, so.
Yeah, how about that? LD 1554 is an act to provide climate change transition assistance for Maine's energy intensive businesses. This is Representative Wadsworth's bill. It creates the Industrial Climate Transition Fund administered by the Efficiency Maine Trust that uses revenue from the sale of carbon dioxide allowances to provide loans to energy intensive manufacturers and other businesses to become more efficient and use less energy in their operations. The loan is forgivable if after 5 years, the number of employees of the fund recipient is substantially the same or more than the number of employees of the recipient when the loan was received. I've listed for you here the small number of individuals that testified on this bill. First note I have here is on existing programs at the Efficiency Maine Trust, which was noted in its written testimony that large energy intensive businesses in Maine are currently eligible to receive RGGI, Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, or RGGI funded incentives through 2 existing trust programs. The first is the Commercial and Industrial Custom Program, which provides large grants as matching funds for private investment in qualifying cost-effective energy projects to save energy and lower greenhouse gases. And the second is the Commercial and Industrial Prescriptive Program, which offers fixed or prescriptive incentives to reduce the cost of projects that help businesses and other entities use energy more efficiently. I'd be happy to answer any questions on that note, although that is pretty much the extent of my knowledge about those two programs. So I imagine the Efficiency Main Trust could answer that question a little better. Doesn't look like there's any questions, so I'll keep going to my second note here. The Efficiency Main Trust in its testimony posed a number of questions about the proposal. As noted below, the IECG submitted testimony that responded to most of those questions. The first question raised was if a participant is no longer in operation after 5 years, they would still be required to repay the loan potentially. The trust asked, how would a loan be collected from an entity that is not in operation? In response, the IECG noted that the trust has had to deal with this issue under its existing programs already. The second note from EMT was if certain conditions are met after 5 years, they shall forgive the entire balance of the loan. And so the question that they asked was, is the intent that the recipient would not be making any payments on the loan during the 5-year period, or is the intent that the trust would pay back to the recipient any payments made during that 5-year period? The IECG asserted that the intent of the bill is to defer all loan payments for 5 years, and then if conditions are met, to forgive the full amount of the loan. So it would be an interest-free loan for 5 years with all payments deferred, and then only either become due or be forgiven if criteria are met. Some other questions that EMT asked is the intent that these loans would offset a portion of a project's overall cost, requiring a copay by the recipient, or would these loans offset 100% of the cost? The second of these questions is, would the loans be subject to any cost effectiveness requirements? Would large energy intensive businesses be eligible for funding under this program and on other RGGI funded programs, or would participation in this program render them ineligible for other RGGI funding? And the final question asked was, is a funding level of $3 million a reasonable amount to allocate to the top 10 to 15 customers in the state? And if so, will those customers be interested in and take advantage of such loans? The trust noted from past feedback that these entities have complex debt structures that may preclude taking on additional liabilities. The IECG in response noted that they believe this new program, which is modeled after the federal PPP or Paycheck Protection Program, may be viewed differently by its members than existing or prior trust programs. Before I take any questions on those, I will note here that IECG in its testimony provided some background that the bill grew out of discussions amongst IECG members and suggested that the bill as drafted is a starting point for discussion and not the final version the committee should adopt. In addition to those specific responses that I noted previously, IECG also generally suggested that many of the program parameters that the trust had questions on were intended to be addressed during the rulemaking process for the creation of the program. I'll pause there and answer any questions anyone might have about that written testimony back and forth between the trust and IECG.
Are there any questions for Dan? Dan, did we have any report backs?
There were no requests for information made during the public hearing.
Great. Representative Berry, did you have a question for Dan?
It's just more an observation. I struggle with the idea of forgivable loans, and
why don't we let Dan go before we get into debate or discussion?
Right. I guess my question for Dan would be whether if in the hearing there was any or any suggestions about alternatives, conditional grants rather than forgivable loans. I don't recall, but maybe you can refresh my memory.
This may be just sort of a bit of commentary on my part, but this was the last bill we heard at the end of a very long day. and there wasn't a lot of discussion, if you will. And in fact, there was a number of entities that submitted testimony on this that were no longer there. So there wasn't a great depth of discussion at the public hearing.
Got it. Thank you.
The Governor's Energy Office noted in its testimony that the 2020 Climate Action Plan recommended, and I'm quoting here, in an effort to stem future industrial emissions increases and find innovative pathways for the long-term reductions required for Maine's 2050 goals, the Maine Climate Council should create an industrial task force of Climate Council members with interest and expertise, as well as outside stakeholders, to focus on solutions to address industrial emissions over time, while supporting continued economic growth in this important section. As a result, the GEO suggested continuing to utilize existing programs at the Trust available for large energy intensive businesses and consider future recommendations on this issue from the Industrial Task Force when available. I had not heard, and it wasn't clear in the testimony, if this task force was already created, was going to be created, or what the time frame was for it meeting and making recommendations. The final note I have here is something that is based on an email that Representative Kessler forwarded to everyone. The bill provides funding of up to $3 million per year for loans to so-called affected customers, which is a term that's defined in section 10109, subsection 3A of Title 35A, to mean a customer who is not primarily in the business of selling electricity, is receiving service at a transmission or sub-transmission voltage level within essentially ISO New England, and is an energy intensive manufacturer, as defined in reports prepared by the U.S. Energy Information Administration. The Commission may also determine that a manufacturer that's not defined as an energy intensive manufacturer in those reports is an affected customer if that manufacturer meets the other requirements of the definition there. And so I believe this was an information request Representative Kessler made on his own to the PUC and then shared with everyone. But according to the PUC, there are 19 entities in Maine that meet the definition of affected customer. And so based on 2018 consumption values, those entities use roughly 9.7% of the total state load, I assume, in that year. As I've noted here, the bill does provide, in addition to those $3 million in loans for affected customers, it provides up to an additional $1 million in loans under this new program to energy intensive businesses in the state that are not affected customers, provided that there is such excess revenue available from the transfer to the fund minus that $3 million for affected customers. So if there are funds available on top of that $3 million, there's an additional $1 million that can be loaned out to energy intensive businesses that are not affected customers, if that makes sense. There's no fiscal information available yet, and I'll stop my share and answer any questions you might have.
Representative Barry.
Dan, thank you for that comprehensive analysis, and forgive me if I missed it earlier, but that 9.7% of load figure for the 19 affected customers that would receive the $3 million, was it in your analysis earlier or presented to us what the average total RGGI funding availability is over the last few years?
I'm not aware of the way that figure is. I didn't include it, and I don't believe that was provided to the committee. I imagine that's a figure that the trust might have available.
Okay, thank you.
Is that something perhaps Michael Stoddard could provide?
I think it is.
Why don't we beam Michael over? Michael, are you able to answer Representative Barry's question?
I think so. I just want to confirm, is the question, what was the total revenues?
Right, so this would be $3 million for the 19 affected customers who are 9.7% of load, as I understand it, roughly. Right. So that's $3 million out of how much total?
About 12.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other questions for Michael while we have him beamed over? Okay, Jordan, you can beam him back. What is the pleasure of the committee on this?
I see Representative Wadsworth's hand. Representative Kessler.
Representative Wadsworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I just want to give the committee an update. I know there's been discussions behind the scene with the IECG Efficiency Main Trust, the Governor's Energy Office, and we'd be prepared to bring back an amendment next week. It'd be probably Wednesday, Thursday that we'd be ready for it. And I think Mr. Hudson would be here to discuss those, what the discussion's been going on behind the scenes, if we could.
Okay, why don't we beam Steve Hudson over? Steve, can you provide the information Nathan was talking about?
I think so. I hesitate to get a little too far into the details because we've agreed on concepts, I think, between the GEO, EMT, and IECG. And the idea is to really utilize this bill as a launching pad for the industrial task force out of the climate action plan. And that because of literally announcements in the last week regarding ARP monies available and some of it going into specific efficiency programs aimed specifically at industrials, it appears that we may not have to tap the existing RGGI programs, or at least if we do, it'll be something that won't be a statutory requirement. It'd actually be an outgrowth of the work of the task force that would be sort of briefed to and supported by the Efficiency Main Trust and its board. So I think it's a positive positive development from our perspective. As I'd said at the hearing, this bill was really just our first thoughts, and we were looked forward to discussions, and thanks to Dan Burgess and Mike Stoddard and Melissa Winnie, they have been very productive discussions. And so we're looking forward to trying to wrap that up in language that the committee can review. And with the committees will involve whichever of your analysts, I think it would be Dan as well, so that the language comes to you in good shape.
Great. Representative Kessler, did you have a question for Mr. Hudson?
No questions. I just had a comment about the legislation.
Okay, good. Are there questions for Mr. Hudson while he's here? Okay, why don't you beam him back over?
Thank you.
Nicole, did you have a question for Steve?
I did, and it sort of came late, and it might not need to be for Steve.
Can we
I can try it
back?
Looks like he still might be here.
I was going to say, I haven't finished beaming him over, so he's still around.
Jordan did not activate the transporter,
So we have to bring his molecular structure back together, but I think we have. And Nicole has a question for you, Steve.
Well, and this question is more as I'm just trying to wrap my head around all the purposes of this legislation. It was likened to the PPP, which had the purpose of trying to keep businesses open and people employed through a time period in which there was a lot of restrictions. And so I guess I'm wondering, it seems like it's tied to people staying in their work, right? 5 years from now, if you still have people employed, you get the money back. But are we at risk of losing these businesses in the way that the PPP was structured to prevent? So it seems like the carrot, I don't know how it fits with the.
It's a very good question, Representative Grochowski. I think that that based on the information from and the discussions we've had so far with Michael, that we wouldn't be looking at a program like that. I would point out, and I think Michael would probably endorse it, that efficiency projects are great because they're one of the few productivity improvement projects at a facility that actually help secure jobs for the future going forward. So because it just makes the process more efficient. It doesn't necessarily replace human labor in the process as other productivity improvements can do. So so we look at it as it's going to go a long way. Is it everything that we had originally wanted? No, but we're also recognizing that we need to be responsive to to kind of what the GEO and the EMT thinks and what they think works and works best. And we're looking forward to, I think, to getting the industrial task force up and running. And I think that's going to be a good outcome for both the state and for its industry.
Any other follow-up, Nicole?
No, thank you. I just think as you're moving forward, considering what the appropriate matching actions would be helpful.
Right. Thank you very much for that input.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Steve before we try to molecularize him, beam him back over? Okay, beam away, Jordan. And then I think Representative Kessler wants to kick off the discussion. And I see we have two Representative Kesslers here. Are you aware of that, Chris?
Yes, it is my more reserved alter ego. This is the other Chris Kessler. No, just kidding. I'm having some technical difficulties with my laptop. It is not equipped with a powerful enough processor to run video and audio at the same time while my laptop gets fixed. So, so I just wanted to reflect on that. I do favor the intent to really look at this sector and how we can reduce emissions, because it really is one of the hardest nuts to crack in our decarbonization efforts. So I'm completely in favor for a more detailed study of these particular businesses. But I also want to raise the issue of equity in this discussion. And I'm glad that I was able to get the list of companies that would be beneficiaries to this money. And for example, we have Pratt and Whitney, and the parent company is Raytheon Technologies. And the CEO's compensation was over $5.3 million. For example, Texas Instruments in my town of South Portland, granted, they provide great jobs here. As people may have heard in the news, there is a shortage of the product that they produce, which is semiconductors. And so they stand to be in a good position into the future here, because their main customer is automobiles, so or the auto manufacturers. But the CEO of Texas Instruments brings in $18 million in compensation per year. So when we're talking about asking for more money from the taxpayers, this makes me absolutely repulsed, and I cannot support giving taxpayer money when there's that much inequality in the workplace there. So I really hope that frames the conversation moving forward, because I would need some very good convincing to support this moving forward. So.
Any other discussion before we have a motion? I don't see anybody else. Do we have a motion? Representative Berry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we table this item.
Is there a second to that? Seconded by Representative Wadsworth. Show of hands, all those in favor of tabling? Any opposed? With the exception of Representative Kessler's Doppelinger, it's unanimous. Great. Deirdre, could you jump back on for a second? Or Jordan, maybe? I saw an email of some other potential bills we could work. Are we working anything else right now, or are we breaking before our hearing? Do you know, Dan?
I think the plan had been to do some language reviews.
And were they yours or Deirdre's?
3 are mine, 1 is Deirdre's.
So why don't we start with yours? And then Deirdre's too late. We'll get to hers last.
So let me send out 2 of mine. Deirdre's and 1 of mine we sort of need to review together, I believe. But here are 2 of mine. So one of them is LD 667. Let me screen share that. So LD 667 is an act to create synergy between Maine industry and Maine's energy goals and the use of certain funds by the Efficiency Maine Trust. This was a divided report. Majority ought not to pass. Minority ought to pass. The fiscal review determined that a fiscal note is required on that minority report, which it notes that the bill amends the purposes of the Efficiency Maine Trust to encourage the development and adoption by the trust of environmentally sustainable energy-related and energy efficiency-related products and services derived from the state's natural resources, industrial byproducts, waste products, and recycled materials. Provisions of this bill may lead to changes in the distribution of funds dedicated to programs within the EMT, but will not change the overall level of expenditures by the EMT. I will leave it up to you as to whether you're comfortable with just changing that vote to ought to pass as amended for the minority report, just to incorporate that fiscal note, and we'll report it out like that, or if you feel you would prefer to re-vote it so that the minority report is ought to pass as amended.
So what's the pleasure of the committee? Representative Berry, you usually have good perspectives on this. What do you want to do?
Dan, which is easier?
It's easier not to re-vote it.
Thank you. That's my recommendation.
Most committees will just, if it's just to incorporate a fiscal note and an ought to pass, they'll say that's just consider ought to pass as amended.
So I understand that Representative Berry moves the path of least resistance.
Indeed.
All righty.
Okay.
The second item I sent out is this is LD 1008, an act to require joint use entities to establish permanent liaisons with all county emergency management agencies. Let me pull that up. So I'm not going to go over the language in any great detail because this was reviewed in sort of a draft form, and I'm not aware of any substantive changes of any kind being made to it as a part of the process that this went through. This was I believe it was 11-1 ought to pass as amended, and then Representative Foster voted ought to pass. When we did our prior review, I noted that the fiscal office determined no fiscal note was required for the ought to pass vote. So that can go out ought to pass as the minority report. The majority report has a fiscal note representing a minor cost increase, other special revenue funds, noting that any additional cost to the Public Utilities Commission as a result of requiring joint use entities to designate permanent liaisons with each county emergency management agency are expected to be minor and can be absorbed within existing budgeted resources. I don't believe there is any substantive change between the language on that you already reviewed. So this could go out ought to pass as amended majority and ought not to pass. I'm sorry, ought to pass as a minority.
Is everybody comfortable proceeding in that fashion? Does anybody object to proceeding that way? Great, we'll go with that.
Now, I'll defer to Deirdre how she wants to handle the next one. Sorry.
Sorry,
What?
I'm saying Skeet is having a moment of high need. I'm not trying to disappear on you guys.
So I was saying Deirdre might have a better idea of how she wants to handle the last two reviews. So I'll defer to her.
I think it may be better just to do 251 first, and then they'll see that provision where you amended in 487, and we can go from there. That's probably the best way. If you
Sure.
Okay. So I have up LD 251 for language review. I did send this out to committee members earlier this week because there was a request at the work session for folks to have a chance to look at it prior to this review on Zoom. I will bring it up anyway. So this is the Act regarding public utility assessments, fees, and penalties. This was a unanimous committee report, ought to pass as amended. And the changes here are highlighted. So the first thing is we had talked about, this applies to both the PUC and the Office of the Public Advocate. So when PUC is calculating and the public advocates calculating the assessments, that they would look at a 3-year rolling average of revenue reported by utility to determine the assessments for each utility when you're separating them between consumer-owned and investor-owned utilities and the time devoted to those two categories. So that change there. The language is slightly different than what was in the PUC memo. I had run this by the PUC and they thought that this worked well. So they were fine with that language. And I've run this whole amendment by them as well, just because a lot of the changes were their changes that they suggested. So that's the corresponding change into the public advocate's position provisions. The next part is regarding the annual report submitted by PUC. The original bill had information in there that would require them to submit draft legislation in their annual report. And there was a decision, because you'll see further down the amendment, we make those changes now in statute to the fees and assessments for inflation, that they would just report annually on any changes. And then the committee could report out a bill to make those changes in statute if they chose to do so. So that change was there. The next part here, for some reason, my cursor doesn't want to move down appropriately, so I'm going to have to do it this way. The next part here is regarding reorganizations. And so the original bill had estimated total, and the PUC had suggested that transaction value would be clearer for them, and also wanted language added that said any filing fee amount not used by the commission to process a reorganization application must be returned to the applicant. So again, this was suggested within their memo, and the committee had said to include the changes suggested by the PUC. These next provisions, none of them are highlighted, but these are all the adjustments for inflation. So there's a few sections that do that. I will note here that some of these numbers may differ from what was in the PUC memo that the committee received. The difference is that I think, and it wasn't 100% clear when I talked to Garrett, that when they calculated them, they just put, if it was like public law 2011, they used January 1st, 2011 as sort of the date to calculate those. I went through and calculated them based on the effective date for those acts that establishes those fees and penalties. And that created some differences in numbers, and I think probably was in line with what the bill is trying to do, and probably more accurate representation to use the dates that the bill actually became law. So all these provisions here, these were all adjustments to those fees and penalties for inflation. And I'm sorry to scroll down like this, but my cursor is not working well with my mouse for some reason. And then the last parts here, in the discussions during the work session, because of these changes in how the assessments would be calculated, the committee had felt that it would be important to maybe get some initial calculations just done on pen and paper at the PUC to sort of get an idea of what they may look like and what the assessments may look like. So this is a requirement that the commission provide those numbers to the committee, and then the committee could report out a bill to make any adjustments to this law if necessary. And since the intent was for you to get a full picture of what those assessments may look like for the utilities, and because the OPA has the same directive to determine assessments, this section here also requires those calculations from the OPA so that you get a full picture of what that looks like. I will note here, I did receive, when I had PUC review these changes, they did say that a January 30th or 31st, 2022 report back date would be a little bit better for them, and that you can get a better picture of numbers. That I will leave up to the committee if they want to make an adjustment. I think dates were tossed around. I'm not sure this is what I had in my notes, and I went back and listened, but that could be an easy fix if the committee wants to go in that direction. And then lastly, those portions of the bill that just how assessments are calculated, the committee had voted to change those to have an effective date of August 1st, 2022, so that when you get those report backs, if there are changes that are needed, that those portions of the law wouldn't go into effect until you have a better idea of what the assessments would look like. So that's what the amendment does. Before I stop sharing screen, and I will take questions, I am going to just go back to highlight this one section to segue for Dan when he does his portion briefly. It's related to the reorganization language. And when you had voted on his bill 487, which he'll talk about in more detail, it was with the idea of what was in current law of the filing fee to not exceed $50,000. And this bill changes that to 0.05% of the transaction value. So in 487, which he's much more familiar with, the way that that's structured, we just wanted to raise that to your attention to see if you needed to make any adjustments to 487 to account for that different way of calculating the fee for a reorganization. We can segue into that now if you'd like to, or if you have any questions on 251, we can handle that first.
Any questions for Deirdre? Jordan, can you beam Skeet to somebody else on the screen? He's getting a little greedy here. Okay, I think you're all set. Dan, did you want to add anything?
So I have LD 47. Before I screen share, I want to make sure I describe the breakdown of votes. So this is a majority ought to pass as amended, minority ought not to pass on LD 487, an act regarding certain employees of and to allow supplemental funding for the public advocate. This was an OPA bill that was voted quite a while ago. So I'm not sure everyone recalls exactly the nature of the vote, but there were 7 members on the ought to pass as amended report and 5 members on the ought not to pass report. 1 member was recorded absent. So let me screen share the amendment. So the general intent of the majority report is to remove from the bill a general provision that allowed the OPA to accept outside funding, which you'll recall had a component of both sort of grants and other funds as well as settlements or stipulations. And instead, as was recommended by or suggested by the Public Utilities Commission, to extend to the Office of the Public Advocate the same filing fee that's provided to the PUC for a reorganization application, as well as the increased filing fee that's provided to the Public Utilities Commission for a petition for approval of the certain high voltage transmission lines. And I'll get to that in a second. So the first section here is new language that would extend the $50,000 filing fee that's currently available only for the Public Utilities Commission, extend it in the same manner and with the same restrictions to the Office of the Public Advocate. And as Deirdre just noted, 251 changes the way that fee is set up from a set amount of $50,000 cap to, I think, 0.05% of the transaction value of the reorganization, with a slight difference, I think, if it's a reorganization of a public utility. So I guess we can get to this once I go through everything, but the question is if there's an intent of having those provisions be consistent, or if it's just simpler to extend the fee to the OPA as it currently stands right now in statute. The second piece here is striking section 1 of the bill, which was that funding provision that I referred to at the beginning of this. And then this is the increased filing fee to the OPA for under the CPCN provision. And so as the law currently stands, the OPA gets paid a filing fee regardless of the nature of the petition in an amount equal to 0.02% of the estimated cost of the cost to erect, rebuild, or relocate the transmission line. The language that is being added here, referring to a petition filed under subsection 2, the fee being 0.04%, that is what is currently provided to the PUC, and this is being extended in the same manner to the OPA. And that is the only change there. So as I've noted in the amendment, the majority report also retains that renaming of the statutory position at the OPA, which no one really seemed to have an issue about. So I guess the outstanding question, in addition to any questions you might have about the amendment generally, is whether or not those on the majority report are comfortable going with, for the filing fee under reorganizations, the $50,000 cap, or if you would like to make it consistent with that change in 251 for the same filing fee for the PUC.
So for those on the majority report, let's deal with that question first. Don't all pipe in at once. Nicole?
Thank you. I'm sort of torn on this because I think consistency is great, but not if it's meaningless other than for the sake of consistency. I don't have a way of knowing, and I don't know if our analysts know, if we can ask, what would that particular percent have been in the case of recent reorganizations? More or less than $50,000. I felt very comfortable with 50,000 based on some recent experiences, but I don't have any clue what that percent means. So I don't know that I feel comfortable switching it just for the sake of switching it without knowing what those numbers look like.
And I don't know what that 0.05% of transaction value would equate to. I know Mr. Corbin, I think, is joining by phone. I'm not sure if he has that information at all, what that would be, but that's the only thing I can suggest at this time.
I would note, Garrett, over.
If I could note real quickly, the direction that I was given in drafting this majority report amendment was, to the extent possible, avoid any actual statutory conflicts. And I guess it's probably important to note that there is no statutory conflict created here. So you could enact these two bills as you see them, and there would be no conflicts created. There might be an issue with that inconsistency between what the PUC gets and what the OPA gets, but no actual conflict.
Okay, I just want you all to know that I'm writing a dog psychology book called Needy Greedy Puppy. Okay, have we got Garrett over here? Garrett Corbin?
We do. He is on the phone, so I'm not sure about the muting and unmuting process.
So do we have a question directed at Garrett? Deirdre, did you say you had something you thought he could supply the information for?
Well, Representative Grohowski said, what would 0.05% of the transaction value based on recent reorganizations equate to in monetary amounts? And I didn't know if Mr. Corbin would have that information handy or not, since those would have gone through the PUC.
Gordon, do you know that off the top of your head? We can't hear you. Your phone is muted. Well, I don't think we're going to get an answer to that. Nicole?
I do feel like I would want an answer before changing. If the committee is comfortable with 50,000, I think we should just keep it there. If we want an answer, I don't know in terms of process, if we could have our morning break and just fire off a quick email to the Public Utilities Commission asking them and pick it back up in a little bit.
Dan, did you want to pipe in on that?
So this is not the specific answer to Representative Grahowski's question, but from my notes from the work session, the OPA had noted that in the Amera reorganization, they spent $68,000 alone in hiring an expert. But I believe that was conversation to justify the $50,000 filing fee. I guess that's not really helpful.
Well, why don't we follow Nicole's suggestion and take our morning break. It's now about 10:40. So if we come back at 10:55, hopefully maybe we can get an answer by then, complete this language review, and go on to our hearing. Okay, so just mute yourselves and stop your video, and we'll be back at 10:55. Okay, how we doing, everyone? Representative Foster, you look nice and relaxed.
Thank you. Thank you.
What retirement looks like, I guess.
It's what retirement would look like without this, but
So I'm seeing a bunch of people texting and emailing while you're on your break. So if you guys continue doing it, I'm going to start a tradition where we come back and we have to tell each other what we did on our break that was away from the computer.
I played with my dog.
Very good. I sent my daughter outside with the dog.
well, I went to check my farm pond. I had a pair of wood ducks in there this morning. First time I've ever seen any in my pond. Usually I've got mergansers chasing my fish.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Well, I unwrapped my deer and bird netting for my apple trees. It looks like Representative Kessler has just been sitting there staring at the screen.
That's all he does.
Okay, I think we got enough back to start up again. Dan and Deirdre, are you guys here? Dan? Great. Did we get any answers back for Nicole's question?
No, I just spoke with Garrett, and the folks that would maybe even have an inkling of what those numbers are aren't around. They're not available right now. He said he's going to double check his email because he thought he may have provided some of those numbers. I couldn't find it right off the bat, but he said they could be more than happy to try to get back to us with something, but they probably wouldn't be today.
So
or
Nicole,
right now.
Nicole, do you want additional time to do this language review and hear back from them?
I'm curious if any other members have anything else to report, and I see that Dan also had his hand up.
So I'll go to Dan first.
So I'll make a suggestion. We had waited to begin any processing on these reports until we could determine whether there was a conflict. So if you wanted us to start this 487 through processing, we're probably looking at least a week or two before we would have final language and a fiscal note. And if you did want to change the way it was set up, you could certainly reconsider it at that point, which might delay it coming out of committee a bit, but it's not like if you agree to it now, it's going to leave the committee and you're not going to have any options available. So if you wanted to send this off while we try to find that information, that could keep things moving.
Nathan?
I would say if it was amended closer to 50, I could likely get on board.
Any other thoughts on Dan's suggestion? Representative Barry?
I guess for my part, I'm interested in consistency, and I think if we learn that doing things differently is warranted, we can always come back at this in a couple of years. But I'm prepared to move forward with the consistent approach.
Anybody else? Scott?
Thanks, Senator. I would just say that I agree with Seth very much. And given what we just heard about in terms of our ability to look at it again in a little bit here, I'm very comfortable moving forward.
So to quote my favorite line from Galaxy Quest, let's do that.
So I'm not sure I'm clear now. The bill includes that current statute $50,000 cap. It sounded like Representative Barry was suggesting to change it to be consistent with the new language for the PUC in 251. Maybe I'm misinterpreting that.
That is correct.
Okay, well, so it's your call certainly, but it would appear that would require reconsideration. That wasn't part of the motion made on this previously.
Nicole?
Thank you. Representative Wadsworth, I'm not sure I understood what you just said. I think you were on the minority report, but are you interested in switching your vote, and in what conditions?
So like on a merger, our worry 0.05% on a merger could be millions of dollars, and then I would be more supportive if we got it down closer to the 50,000 that's currently in statute. I guess 0.05% is too high, so I would be willing to reconsider at a lower amount.
What's the committee's pleasure? Do you want to move to reconsider and vote on what Representative Berry is proposing, or potentially what Representative Wadsworth is proposing? Representative Nicole. Representative Growowski.
I like that. Sort of formal casual at the same time. So the bill right now for the OPA says $50,000 max, and then they have to pay back any of that they don't use. And I think that we're talking about the OPA bill only. So what I think I hear is Representative Wadsworth, you are okay with the bill as it's currently written and would change your vote if we reconsidered. But if we reconsidered and changed to the percent, then you would stay where you've been. Okay, I'm just trying to get my head around. The number could be $1 million, but they still only spend 50,000 and give the rest back, but it wouldn't have the same cap. So I understand there's a difference there.
Representative Wadsworth.
I just worry if it's, if they get a couple $1 million, I don't think there's any pressure on what they spend on like experts and stuff like that. And so then, you'd have a couple $1 million that would have to get absorbed in rates, where if it was lower, there might be a little more pressure on the OPA or PUC on a merger or something like that.
So once again, I'm at the situation of what is the pleasure of the committee. I think either way, we're going to need a motion to reconsider. Representative Berry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do think that the having a sliding scale depending on size is appropriate. Some of these mergers are relatively small and simple. Others are very, very large and sophisticated, especially now that we have massive multinational, multi-layered holding company structures and global corporate structures involved in ownership of our utilities. So I do think that we need to have a sliding scale, and for that reason, would like to move reconsideration in hopes that we can get to that point.
So it's been moved by Representative Berry to reconsider the committee's prior vote on this. Is there a second? Seconded by Representative Cuddy. Since this is a procedural vote, I'm going to ask for a show of hands. Dan?
So, sorry, which bill are you reconsidering?
So they are reconsidering the one we were just going over, which is, tell me the LD number.
47. Mine is 487, but it sounds like you're talking about the PUC language in 251.
Dan, I think we're all set on 251, and if I understood correctly, your question to us was whether we wanted to mirror that same language in 487.
Oh, so when you referred to the sliding scale, you were referring to that 0.05%? Okay, I thought we were talking about something different. Sorry.
That's okay.
So does everybody understand which bill we are reconsidering? It's been moved by Representative Berry to reconsider, seconded by Representative Cuddy. Since this is a procedural vote, I'm just going to ask for a show of hands. All those in favor of reconsideration, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All those opposed? 7-1. Did I get them all? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yes, 7-1. Okay, it's reconsidered. I'll accept any motions people want to make. You want to go like this or like this? Any motions? Representative Barry.
So I think there is some confusion. So Dan, could you just restate what you think the two-way intersection is here? What is the fork in the road? The two different scenarios that you were asking us to decide on.
I think you've already taken that fork by reconsidering, unless the purpose of the reconsideration is for any member to change their votes on the prior. Yes, I would agree with Representative Grabowski, but the proposal you were just describing is to make consistent for both the PUC and the OPA in 251 and 487 that language about the filing fee for reorganizations. So as it presently stands as voted in 251, it includes that new 0.05% of the total transaction value language for the filing fee for the PUC. In 487, it includes the $50,000 filing fee cap.
Which is the old language that existed in the PUC statute. That is currently in the PUC statute, but that would be changed by LD 251. So the question before the committee is, do we want consistency? Do we want to have the same sort of sliding scale logic that we did choose to enact in LD 251, and bring that over to the OPA statute as well, with, as Representative Grabowski noted, the knowledge that the amount that is not used in adjudicating these cases and litigating these cases is refunded to the filer.
Representative Grabowski, or did you have a question about what, Deirdre, about what Seth just said?
I didn't, but just to throw another loop in, I did just get an email from Garrett Corbin with at least some information, and he just sent over the Versant reorg value. And so I don't know if that's helpful at all, but it said that the NMAX Corporation announced that the transaction to purchase Emera Maine for $1.286 million, 959 million US dollars from Emera Inc. has successfully closed, including the assumed debt aggregate enterprise value is 1.3 billion US dollar on closing. So that's what Garrett just sent to me in an email. I thought that might be helpful since you're having this conversation, but don't mean to derail you.
And unless I ran the calculations wrong, 0.05% of that total value would be 66 million. I don't work in OFPR either.
66 million?
Well, hold on. That doesn't. I mean,
we're going for 0.05%, Dan? Is that what the PUC new bill is saying?
You're right. I can't.
Go ahead, Dan. Dan? Did Dan freeze?
Yeah, I did that wrong. I think it's more like 650,000.
Okay.
But OFPR always says
6 million.
Never to do math on mic, and I probably should have listened to them.
There's a little bit of difference between 66 million and $650,000, whether it's Canadian or US. Nicole, did you want to add something?
I was also doing a little math, not on mic, and I think that Dan is correct in his second figure. But I was also scribbling numbers down. You know, I love consistency, but only if it makes sense. And I felt really comfortable with $50,000 because that is one of the bigger transactions that's happened recently. And we heard from the OPA that they spent $68,000. So right now they're getting $0,000, $0 period. So being able to have that $50,000 to spend is a vast improvement over where they have been. And if they spend a little extra, then that goes, I believe, back to all of us through how the OPA levies its cost of doing business. So whereby the OPA is a much smaller organization, the Public Utilities Commission, I feel personally more comfortable with a lower number than a large percent that looks like it's, you know, more than 10 times what we were previously talking about. Right now, they can get $0.
Mr. Chair.
Okay, let's see where we're at. Representative Cuddy wanted to say something for a long period of time. Have you given up, Representative Cuddy?
On so many things in my life. I am actually at a point where Representative Berry was going to bring something up, and that's fine. I would really like to take a short break to caucus this after that, if that's amenable to the rest of the group.
Short break for caucus, Representative Berry?
I would prefer that we table it until after the bill hearing for which folks are waiting. I'm not making that motion, but that would be my preference.
That's fine by me.
Okay, I'm waiting for something. Since this is a language review, do we really have to table it?
You reconsidered it, so it's...
That's
yeah.
right. You're a good point, Dan.
Mr. Chair?
Better at parliamentary procedure than math, Dan. Representative Berry.
Mr. Chair, I move that we table this item until later.
A second.
I would second.
Cuddy. All those in favor of tabling, show of hands. All those opposed? Looks like it's unanimous. A little bit late, Representative Foster. Okay, so we do have a lot of people waiting for this public hearing. So I'm going to go to Jordan's list of people testifying as I do the introduction for public hearings. So we are now going to enter into a public hearing on LD 695. And during public hearings, this is an opportunity for the public to have input on their feelings about this bill. It is open and anyone can testify. We do ask that you sign up in advance if you can, because that allows Jordan to create excuse me. I have to open up this file. That allows Jordan to open up a list for me of people who are going to be testifying, which is what I'm trying to access now. During the public hearing, I'm going to be hearing from people who want to testify in favor of the bill, people who want to testify against the bill, and people who want to testify neither for nor against the bill. We do ask people testifying in those categories to limit your testimony to 3 minutes. And we do that simply because if we had to hear entire length of people's testimony, we would be here forever and never be able to actually work on the bills. So we request that you, if you looks like you have more than 3 minutes of testimony, that you submit that to us in writing, and that you highlight in your verbal testimony the things you want us to pay attention to in your written testimony. And we ask everyone testifying to please submit written testimony too as well. Our committee will often go back and read that testimony and reread it at work sessions so we're familiar with it and come forward with any questions we may have about it. When you get up and testify, you'll have 3 minutes to testify. The committee will then be allowed to ask you questions to find out information about your testimony. It will not be an opportunity for anybody else in the attendees list or anybody who's not a committee member to ask a question, but it will be an opportunity for committee members to ask you a question. Once you are done testifying and the questions have been answered, you will be beamed back over to the attendees list, and you will not have an opportunity to speak again, and you will not have an opportunity to ask anyone else questions. If you do want to submit written comments, additional written comments after you've presented your testimony, feel free to do so through the legislative portal, and we will look at those additional written comments. I want to remind everybody that this Zoom is being broadcast live, both audio and video. So you are on live, and it is being recorded and will become a permanent part of the committee's records. So please be respectful in the language you use. Please don't have anything behind you that's a political statement or anything like that, or shouldn't be seen on camera. And keep your points succinct and directly to the point. I'll give you a caution when we get to about 3 minutes and ask you simply to take about 15 seconds to wrap up your testimony. With that, I believe I have the list of people interested in testifying who have signed up on this bill, and I'll recognize the sponsor, Representative Seth Berry, to present LD 695, an act to allow municipal utility expansion under certain conditions. Representative Berry.
Thank you, Senator Lawrence, fellow members of the EUT committee. As you know, my name is Seth Berry, and I'm very pleased to be with you here to present LD 695. When I first served on this committee in 2007, 2008, it was not called the Energy Utilities Technology Committee. I believe we were Utilities, Technology, and Energy. We voted at that time in favor of a bill relating to the Kennebunk Light and Power District. You may recall that that district serves all of Kennebunk, or almost all of Kennebunk, and parts of a couple other towns. It has very low rates, excellent customer service by all accounts, local control, and excellent reliability. Right now, the residential delivery costs for KLPD customers is 2.1 cents per kilowatt hour. So by comparison, those of us in CMP territory are paying 9.3 cents for delivery, 2.1 versus 9.3. At the time when we voted on a bill relating to KLPD, the folks in Kennebunk who were then and are still served by Central Maine Power, a very small portion of the town, wanted to switch to become customers of KLPD. They had voted to join KLPD, and they brought a bill, the district and those individuals especially brought a bill to allow this, and we passed that bill. However, this was not the end of that long and sad story. In effect, what has happened since is that Central Maine Power has been able to set the value of their assets in the portion of territory that would be acquired, and has set the value high enough, knowing that they need to be a willing seller, that KLPD cannot justify the expense. Pursuing a court case to establish the value is prohibitive for KLPD, and CMP is well aware of this. So not able to incur the significant legal expenses of properly establishing the value of the assets. 13 years later, the intent of our law and the will of the people of Kennebunk has been thwarted. 2 years ago, in the 2019 hearing, this committee with LD 1542 heard from the bill sponsor, Representative Diane Dank, who wished to solve this longstanding problem. I think what we learned then, and you may recall, is that that bill really took the wrong approach. What the general manager of KLPD at the time pointed out is that what was really needed was a fair way to set the value of the assets. So this bill before you today would solve that problem very simply. It would provide that the PUC establish this value. The valuation of a utility's assets is a routine part of rate making. In fact, it is the very heart of the process of rate making. And for this reason, a PUC determination makes the most sense. The other thing this bill would do is provide that the PUC determine that no net harm has been demonstrated to the ratepayers of the utility whose territory is reduced. So in this instance, CMP customers and ratepayers are not harmed. And by the way, CMP shareholders also would need to not be harmed, or it would be an unconstitutional taking. So the bill would provide for that no net harm, no harm, no foul, essentially standard. And this is a crucial point. Some of those who you will hear from later who are concerned about this bill will come to us with vivid imagination, concerned about potential harm to their ratepayers if the bill passes. And when you hear those warnings, those concerns, I ask you to read the actual bill. The PUC is required under the bill to consider such concerns and to block the expansion if any actual harm is established. Having read the Public Utilities Commission testimony and also testimony submitted yesterday by the Eastern Maine Electric Cooperative, I do want to offer two potential amendments to the committee to consider. First, the PUC has asked whether it could transfer cost obligations that are currently imposed on investor-owned utilities to the new municipal COU or expanded COU in establishing the acquisition price. I think that's a very reasonable addition to the bill. It's in keeping with the no net harm standard. Secondly, Eastern Maine Electric does have a very unique set of circumstances. As you know, they serve a very, very rural area, the size of Rhode Island and Delaware combined, and with only 12,600 customers. So it's an expensive area to serve. And they share towns with the Holton Water Company, a municipal utility with much lower rates and much lower cost factors. So they're understandably concerned. But two things, let's remember that for Holton to expand into Eastern Maine Electric turf, which I understand they're not interested in, they would first need to go to the PUC, and the PUC would need to find, quote, no proven harm, unquote, to Eastern Maine Electric's customer owners. And additionally, and here's a possible amendment to the bill, if Eastern Maine Electric was more comfortable with it, we could, in consideration of their very unique circumstances, simply exempt rural cooperatives from the bill. I think they're the only co-op that would conceivably have this concern. The others are on islands. So I don't think their borders are quite the same thing. So thank you for listening, and I'm happy to try to answer any of your questions.
Are there questions from the committee for Representative Berry? Seeing none, thank you, Representative. We'll go on to proponents of this legislation, and I will recognize George Terrian from the Rockland Energy Committee. George, go right ahead.
Thank you, Senate Chair Lawrence and House Chair Berry, for inviting me to testify today. I trust that I'm not muted and that you can see me all right.
We can hear you fine.
Thank you very much. Members of the committee, staff, public, I'm an architect practicing in Maine since 1970, and I've been long involved in conservation and energy issues. I got my public start designing Gilsland Farm, the headquarters of the Maine Audubon Society, in 1970, the first solar heated building in Maine that wasn't residential. And I've been involved in this kind of thing ever since, in education as well as in practice. As you mentioned, I'm a member of the Rockland Energy Advisory Committee. There are 6 citizens, a staff sustainability coordinator who's very important to our operation, and a member of the council who is our liaison. We are appointed by Mayor Ed Glazer and approved by council. I mention this details because I am not testifying on behalf of the city or the Rockland Energy Advisory Committee. We have not had enough time to be able to consider the bill and to form a specific response. So I'm testifying as a citizen. And as a citizen, I believe that passing this bill is of the utmost importance to Rockland, even though I imagine the committee will anticipate complications from its implementation. I think this is an essential opportunity for Rockland, not just a repetition of reasons for support that you've heard from Senator Berry and probably have reviewed from others. The committee is charged broadly, our Energy Committee in Rockland is charged broadly to assist, recommend, and chart the satisfaction of the mandate that we have received from the council. Our goals include meeting 100% renewable in the use of electricity by the municipal government and its operations by 2025. We met that earlier this year, so we are serious. And then by 2045, which is not very far away, the entire community of Rockland, we will work hard to make carbon neutral. That is our ambitious goal, and we have 6 steps. The second one is of the steps that we have imagined for reaching that goal of entirely carbon neutral for the entire city of Rockland is to develop renewable power to, quote, supply the entire community's electrical needs, for example, via a municipal or regional utility. I like that language. A municipal or regional utility would greatly strengthen the ability of Rockland and the Midcoast to achieve our 2045 goal of making the entire community of Rockland carbon neutral. As you well know, such a utility could work to join interests among those who generate, distribute, conserve power. This is better, not more power. This is to accomplish our carbon neutral requirements and our energy requirements. It would combine technological advances with undiluted public benefit. Think of what's happened in Booth Bay in recent years. Gain access to opportunity financing from Washington, the Department of Energy, grants, etc. Innovate nimbly, a test bed, a cooperative. We would restore public confidence in the strength of government, I believe, by doing this. And I'm not saying anything negative.
You're approaching the 3-minute mark.
Thank you. So my conclusion, Senate Chair Lawrence, is to please recommend this bill for passage wholeheartedly. We in Rockland are ready to address its provisions. Meeting our climate emergency needs this bill. Thank you.
Great. And George, if you haven't, we'd encourage you to submit your entire testimony to the legislative portal, because this is a committee of geeks and we do sit around and read it. Great. Are there questions for Mr. Therrien from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much. We will now continue with people testifying in favor of this bill, and we'll go to Gordon Weil of Harpswell. Gordon?
Sorry, I'm having a little trouble with Zoom.
That's okay. We can hear you, Gordon. We just can't see you. Well, now we can see you.
All right, great. I went to an alternate computer. Thank you. I'll be very brief. I'm Gordon Weil. I live in the town of Harpswell. I have submitted written testimony, and I am available to be of whatever assistance I can be to the committee. I believe this bill ought to be passed because it resolves a conflict between 2 pieces of legislation, both passed by the legislature, both with good intent, but one gets in the way of the other and it's impossible for it to operate. And this would resolve the conflict between the 2 pieces of legislation and would permit ultimate authority to be with the people who it ought to be with in a democracy. It allows the people of a municipality to take action. I would just like to make one comment on something that Representative Berry said. He proposed to exempt co-ops to avoid the problem of a municipal coming into a co-op territory and using Eastern Maine as an example. I think that's correct. And I think, in fact, the exemption ought to apply to all of the existing consumer-owned utilities, that there is no need for them to splinter off into municipalities, into municipal utilities. So I would make the exemption apply to all existing consumer-owned utilities. With that, I will conclude my testimony, recommend that you read my brief written testimony. And if you have any questions, here I am.
Great. Thank you, Gordon. Are there questions for Mr. Weil? Representative Cuddy.
Thank you very much, Senator. Thank you, Mr. Weil, for being here and offering up your expertise. I wanted to get your take on, Mike, about the capacity of a municipality to actually handle a utility.
I think it's a good question, and there are really two answers. Municipalities enter into lots of districts today, which require some degree of skill in operating them: school districts, water districts, sewer districts, and beyond that, there are existing consumer-owned utilities, which are municipal utilities in this state, a number of them. They are the oldest utilities in the state of Maine, have been here long before the investor-owned utilities, and have functioned continuously and satisfactorily since then. There are organizations available for municipal utilities that provide them technical assistance and support, safety programs, and so on, so they don't each have to reinvent the wheel. So there's a lot of common activity among the municipals or other consumer-owned utilities as well that make it possible for a relatively small utility to operate well. And of course, the record shows in Maine, they operate both more reliably than the investor-owned utilities and at lower cost.
Any follow-up, Representative Cuddy?
No, thank you, Senator.
Okay. Representative Ziegler.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Weil, for being here today. Are you aware of any other municipalities besides Kennebec that wanted to have a municipal-owned utility?
I'm sorry, I cut out, but I got the question, if you can hear me, relating to other municipalities beyond Kennebunk that had an interest in something like this. Madison is the obvious example. Madison has the right to serve 4 municipalities and has been unable to do so because of the impediments that once you get to the starting gate, the commission is in a position to give weight, considerable weight to the incumbent utility, and that stood in the way of Madison serving customers in the remainder of Madison and in the other 3 towns. Some time ago, after the municipal, the section of 35A that allows for the creation of municipal utilities, the town of Jay undertook to look into creating its own utility for the town, which clearly would have been allowed under the municipal law. They were prepared to vote on it and the works, to do everything that the law required, but were eventually deterred from doing that by this conflict, which essentially gives such broad power to the commission for any reason whatsoever to turn down an application, even if it's been voted by the residents of the town, that they simply were deterred and did not proceed. I believe, and I don't have hard evidence of this, but I believe there are other municipalities who are in a similar position to Jay, which would consider, put to the voters, establishing their own utility. I want to stress that the ultimate decision here is a democratic decision, and there's nobody can come to you and say, if you pass this bill, it will happen. It will only happen if the people of a municipality want it to happen.
Any follow-up, Representative Ziegler?
No, that was pretty definitive.
Sorry, I don't hear anything now.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Weil?
I can read that you ask if there are any other questions. I can't hear.
You're okay. Thank you.
That's it?
Mr. Chair?
Thank you.
Oops, I apologize. One
Mr.
minute.
Chair, can you hear me?
Representative Kessler.
I'm sorry, I'm having technical difficulties and delays here. Good morning, Mr. Weil. Thank you for being here with us.
Sorry,
I was wondering if
I don't hear anything.
Am I?
Why don't
coming
you
in clear?
state your question, Chris, and we'll see if we can get it translated.
Oh boy.
Everything
Maybe he could
seems to
stick
be
around for a
working,
second.
but no sound.
State your question, Chris, please. Chris? Okay, it looks like we have a questioner and
Somebody could write on a piece of paper and give me a hint, the subject, I'd answer. Otherwise, I'm dead.
So I'm going to
Technology has defeated me.
Have the question submitted in writing to Mr. Weil and that we get it for the work session. Okay, any other questions for Mr. Weil? Okay, thank you.
Hey, do you hear me?
We can
I
hear
think
you
I'm here
now,
now.
Chris, but I don't think Mr. Weil can hear you.
Mr. Weil has gone. Okay.
He's here, but there are technical difficulties for both of you.
Jeez. All right.
So my suggestion, Chris, is that we do your question in writing. We'll get it to Mr. Weil and he'll submit a response.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay.
And I read the chat.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Gordon. Okay, thanks.
Yes.
We'll go on to the next.
You're waiting for Chris to answer the question. That's all I see. Can I? Yes, I can read the chat.
Okay, we'll go on to the next person testifying in favor of this bill, and we'll go on to Sharon Staz. Sharon?
Thank you. I'm Sharon Staz, a resident of Kennebunk, Maine, a town partially served by a consumer-owned utility. Currently retired, I have almost 30 years experience in the consumer-owned utility business, having served as a general manager for a small system in Massachusetts, and most recently as general manager for the Kennebunk Light and Power District. I'm obviously here today to speak in favor of LD 695. Like many in the room or online, I have been aware and participated in numerous pieces of legislation on this topic. And this legislation removes one obstacle while retaining all the previous restrictions and concerns that have been expressed over the years. All the attempts to expand municipal utilities over the years, and I think some going back prior to 1962, have all been citizen-led initiatives that deserved a fair and just process to obtain a single goal. This bill gives them an opportunity to do that. The desire for local control, a voice at the board meeting, the right to vote for a board member does not come from the board of directors planning how to increase their profits. It comes from a couple of soccer moms sitting in the stands at a game, learning that their neighbors have all these rights when it comes to the utility that serves them. Those discussions expand to the grocery store, the post office, the backyard barbecue, and on to become a movement. The need for better service at the lowest possible cost does not come from a general manager looking to expand his or her workload. It comes from dissatisfied customers who learn about the difference in utility performance from their coworkers, their friends, or simply by looking across the street in a storm. To the best of my knowledge, none of the initiatives in the past have come from the utility boardroom. They have all been led by the residents in a town divided with utility service. It is important to remember that factor in weighing this bill or any regarding expansion. Town-wide votes are required, strict processes of evaluation of service, the rationale for change, etc., are all in place and will remain so with the passage of this bill. In the past, we have heard testimony about taking a man's property without their permission. How irrational is that? Customers are not property. Poles, wires, inanimate equipment are property, and under the existing and proposed legislation would be paid for with just and reasonable compensation. In the past, we've heard the slippery slope argument, and yet throughout all these years, not one piece of proposed legislation has brought out the cry of "Me Too." And we constantly hear about how the utility losing customers will lose revenue and thus cause harm to its other existing customers. Why do we never hear that they will also lose expenses? The utility will not have to tree trim in that area, replace aging equipment, respond to storm damage, send bills, make inspections, or perform any number of tasks associated with good customer service. Depending upon the area served, the loss of the expenses may more than offset the loss of the revenue. Yet we never hear that side of the transaction. I encourage you to give LD 695 due consideration and pass it favorably out of committee. It's another tool in the toolbox, one that may or may not ever be used, but removing obstacles is always the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there questions from the committee for Ms. Stas? Representative Berry.
Thank you, Ms. Stas, and thank you, Senator Lawrence, for allowing me to ask a question on my own bill. Ms. Stas, you said you were the general manager at Kennebunk Light and Power District, and did you also do you have experience with other utilities as well?
Yes, I've managed a utility in Princeton, Mass. I was also elected to represent the New England states, and one of three of us from New England on the American Public Power Association's board of directors, which serves over 2,000 communities in the United States and its territories. So I've had a lot of experience, I think, and it's certainly not directing them or running them, but learning about them and seeing how they are operated and how they and involved with expansions and so on.
Thank you very much.
Follow up, Representative Berry?
All set.
Any other questions for Ms. Stas from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much for coming to testify.
Thank you.
We'll now go on to our next proponent in favor of this bill, and it's Julie Rosenbach. Julie?
Thank you, Senator Lawrence, Representative Berry, and the members of the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology. My name is Julie Rosenbach. I am the Sustainability Director for the City of South Portland, and I am here today to speak in favor of LD 695. So as you may know, the residents and elected leadership of South Portland have a strong interest in mitigating the worst impacts of climate change and transitioning to clean, efficient, renewable energy. We have ambitious goals to move our community forward, including reducing greenhouse gas emissions 80% by 2050. This goal is in line with state goals and will help us reduce our energy costs and remain economically competitive over the long run. So both our One Climate Future Plan and the state's Maine Won't Wait plan are centered on electrifying the economy and greening electric generation. And while it's widely understood that this transition is going to require significant investments in grid expansion, distributed energy resources, and storage, I urge you to recognize that these upgrades will need to be accompanied by significant regulatory reforms. To date, the innovative new programs South Portland and other cities have spearheaded or attempted including assistance with electric vehicle charging infrastructure, efficiency programs, battery storage, and installing DER resources, have largely met with reticence or resistance. Because the crux of our climate action plan, are to drive the majority of our energy use toward beneficial electrification, we need a utility that is cost-effective, reliable, forward-thinking, and mostly whose interests are in line with state and municipal goals. To be honest, the creation of a municipal utility is not my first choice to accomplish this. The main option is the state option is my first choice. But we are putting a lot of eggs in the electrification basket, and we must have the flexibility, should that not pass, we must have the flexibility that this option affords us. Therefore, I urge you to vote in favor of LD 695. This would remove the statutory language that requires a willing seller to establish a municipal-owned utility and enable cities and towns who wish to do so to move forward with the exploration of establishing our own consumer-owned utility. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rosenbach. Are there questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you. We will now go to individuals testifying against this legislation, and I will go to Carlisle, and I believe it's Tuggy.
Thank you, Senator Lawrence. It's Tuggy.
Tuggy, thank you.
Carlisle Tuggy, thank you. Thank you, Senator Lawrence and Representative Berry. My name is Carlisle Tuggy. I'm the General Counsel and Secretary of the Central Maine Power Company. I'm also a resident of the town of Cumberland, and you're getting an inside look at my home office. Hopefully my 3-year-old doesn't walk in. This is first for this year. I haven't testified, so little strange to have you all in my home. But anyway, the world we're living in. So I'm here today to testify in opposition to LD 695. And as you know, in recent years, a number of bills have been introduced in the legislature to allow a municipal electric utility to infringe upon or take an incumbent electric utility's service territory. The current iteration of the legislation narrows the scope of review by the PUC when a municipal utility wants to expand into an incumbent electric utility's service territory. Under the current law, a process does exist for a municipal entity to become a utility, and there's no need to change it. In addition to the current requirements of financial and technical capabilities, the amendment provides a new statutory criteria for approval that would narrow the commission's review of a municipal request, a finding that there's no proven net harm to the incumbent electric utility's other customers due to a resulting shift in customers from the incumbent electric utility to the municipal electric utility. The term no proven net harm is undefined, which will lead to varied interpretations of the language and thus implementation disputes in all likelihood. The proposed standard on its face is less stringent. The current commission standard applies three prongs. The first being a finding of a public need and that a public need exists for the proposed service, that the applicant has the technical ability to provide the proposed service, and that the applicant has the financial capability to provide the service. As the commission highlighted in its decision pertaining to Kennebuck Latent Power's attempt to take over a portion of CMP's service territory, the general public interest is the overriding consideration in determining the second utility's case, and thus all issues relevant to the public interest may be considered. Under the new legislation, there's no finding regarding public interest in order for the municipality to take over a portion of the incumbent service territory, and it appears the PUC would be required to allow it unless the public utility proves net harm to its other customers. LD 695 does not meet, in addition, some constitutional requirements that are of a concern to CMP. First, for any taking to occur as a threshold matter, there must be a finding of a public purpose. If this purpose and exigency requirement is not met, then the law is struck down and the state can't take the property at all. If there is a public purpose and exigency, then the property can be taken, but the effective property, as you know, must be provided just compensation. The bill does not meet the public purpose and exigency requirements. Second, the bill must provide appropriate measure for compensating the owners of the seized assets. LD 695 does not meet this requirement. Under the takings clause, a condemning statute must designate the procedural means to obtain the necessary just compensation. The bill would pay just compensation as determined by the commission for the property of the transmission and distribution company, and we don't think that passes constitutional muster. For these reasons, we're testifying in opposition to the bill, and the written testimony that I've provided will provide you the site references for those, for the case law supporting those constitutional tenets.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Are there questions for Ms. Tuggy from the committee? I don't see any, so thank you for coming.
Thank you for hearing us. Take care.
Take care. And we'll now continue with people testifying in opposition to this bill. And I'll recognize Scott Hollowell of Eastern Maine Electrical Cooperative. Scott?
Thank you, Senator Lawrence and Representative Berry and members of the committee. My name is Scott Hollowell. I'm the CEO of Eastern Maine Electric Cooperative. We are testifying in opposition to this bill. We serve about 12,600 consumers in over 70 towns throughout Washington, Penobscot, and Aroostook counties. We have about a 3,000 square mile service area with a very small peak load of 19 megawatts and 94 million kilowatt hours annually we sell. Our system was designed and built efficiently to serve all the towns and all of the consumers that we serve. The subject matter of this bill has been before this committee in different versions over the past 20 or so more years. Currently, there is a process in place at the PUC to make changes in the utility service territory. We believe this process should be followed. While this bill does provide for the PUC to set a price, the bill would disregard the existing standard and replace it with a standard of providing there's no new harm to the ratepayers due to the loss of customers to the existing utility. We are concerned about this dangerous precedent that it does set. The possibility of this type of bill can have serious negative effects, particularly to Eastern Maine Electric. It could hurt our ability to get long-term financing, and if so, at reasonable rates. It would make it very difficult for us to conduct effective long-term system planning for our service area if we don't know for sure what our service area will be out in the future. When we make plant investments, we do it for a period exceeding 30 years of life. Therefore, our reliability could be degraded if we're not able to make the necessary plant improvements because we don't know what our area will look like in the future. It could hurt our ability to get competitive electricity pricing from standard offer service. That would create a new unknown for the energy provider. The unknown would be, would they lose load due to losing municipalities? If there's uncertainty, it causes price to go up. Attached to my written testimony was testimony that we submitted a couple of years ago from Jason Strong from the National Rural Cooperative Finance Corporation. They're a bank that many electric cooperatives use. While his testimony was from a couple of years ago, it's still very relevant here. When looking at this bill, I was trying to understand, why is it needed? Is there a municipality right now that wants to form its own municipal district? If there is one, I would ask that municipality use a process that's in place today at the Maine PUC. If the municipality has not tried that process, then why is this legislation needed? If they're going to try to achieve a particular objective, my question would be, is there another avenue they could use as opposed to this bill? When looking at the bill in more detail, it doesn't say anything about the harm from loss of property, which there would be harm from loss of property. It only talks about loss of customers. And the bill doesn't even indicate what property is. Is it just the electric meter? Is it the transformer? Is it the service line? Does it include the primary line serving that individual? Does it include the primary line going down the road that serves many consumers? And that same primary line will also be serving consumers in other municipalities. Does it even include the substation that serves many municipalities? Again, the bill only refers to loss of customers, ignores the loss of property.
Scott, we are at the 3-minute mark. So if you could just summarize and then submit in writing what else you need.
Certainly. Yeah, I guess in closing, I guess like to say that there is a concern that trying to provide something for municipality, which they may or may not be acted on, which may or may not provide the municipality what they really need. But this would cause harm for Eastern Maine Electric, a consumer-owned rural electric cooperative serving the most economically challenged part of the state. We believe it would put risk to us in our 70 towns that we serve. We certainly ask the committee to vote ought not to pass. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions from the committee for Mr. Hollowell? I do have one question. I believe the sponsor talked about exempting co-ops out of this. Do you have a reaction to that?
We certainly appreciate that thought process of the exemption. It still gives us some concerns of the dangerous precedent it does set. One thing to exempt electric cooperatives in this session, what happens in the next session or out in the future. Once you start down that slope, it just gives some concerns as to what might happen in the future.
Okay, great. Thank you. Other questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much. We'll now go to individuals testifying neither for nor against this bill, and I'll recognize our public advocate, Barry Hobbins. Barry?
Thank you very much, Chairman Lawrence, Chairman Barry, and members of the Energy, Utilities, and Technology Committee. I'm Barry Hobbins, and I am the public advocate with the Office of the Public Advocate. And today I'm here to testify neither for nor against LD 695. The OPA would like to thank Representative Barry for submitting this bill, because it's our opinion that this bill is consistent with his missions of looking at the best interest of Maine ratepayers and keeping that in mind. That this bill has a provision in it that we'd like to give the opportunity and emphasize that if the bill does move forward, it would be clear absolutely that we need to preserve the principle currently included in the bill, that any change in ownership made should not adversely impact ratepayers that continue to be served by the incumbent utility following the change to a municipal ownership. I think that's something that's in the bill that's very, very critical. And again, that's the major point of my conversation. We have not got into the other variables that are presented in this bill because there are a lot of issues that will have to be reviewed. But essentially, that's why we can't give our outright support for the bill. But the provision in the bill that I mentioned is very important. And so if the bill does pass in some form or some amended version, if that's the case, I would hope that that provision which I mentioned would be included. With that, I'll answer any questions. And again, these are really difficult questions for your and issues for your committee to address. And I appreciate the opportunity to learn a little bit and go through the process with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Are there questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll now continue with people testifying neither for nor against, and we'll go to Garrett Corbin of the PUC.
Good morning. Can everyone see and hear me this time? A little better luck. Good. All right. Senator Lawrence, Representative Barry, members of the committee, good morning. My name is Garrett Corbin. I am testifying neither for nor against LD 695 on behalf of the Maine Public Utilities Commission. The act involves the commission's approval criteria for authorization of a municipal power district to expand its service to areas that are already being served by a different public utility. Section 1 of the act amends current law to require that the commission authorize such service expansions if there is, quote, no proven harm to the ratepayers of the existing utility resulting from the loss of customers And Section 5 of the Act requires the Commission to determine just compensation for the transfer of property to be paid for the existing utility by the utility that's expanding its service. Again, under current law, the Commission may approve a utility expanding into the service territory of an existing utility only upon a declaration after a public hearing that the public convenience and necessity require a second public utility. In the context of considering a public utility's request to provide service in a second utility's service territory, the Commission, under current law, must find either that the existing utility service is inadequate or that the second utility's proposed service is not currently provided. So differences in rate alone would not be enough in existing law to find that an existing utility service is inadequate. In applying the no proven harm standard, the Commission would have to consider harm to the existing utilities ratepayers. The Commission notes that many of the state's energy policy requirements apply only to investor-owned transmission distribution utilities, such as the revised net energy billing and renewable energy procurement programs. For this reason, the cost of these programs are paid for by ratepayers of only the IOU. If current customers of an IOU become customers of a municipal power district, the remaining customers of the existing investor-owned utility would have to make up the lost revenue. The Commission seeks clarification for that reason as to whether, when it considers no proven harm to the existing utilities ratepayers, whether the Commission should consider the transfer of costs resulting from state programs that would have been paid by the new customers of the municipal power district. If so, the Commission also seeks clarification of whether it's authorized to approve a charge from the existing utility to the second utility to collect lost revenues associated with state mandated energy programs. And the Commission is happy to answer any questions and plans to be available for the work session as well.
Great. Are there questions for Mr. Corbin from the committee? Representative Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Corbin, for being here this morning, well, afternoon. The question I have is more for the work session, but if you could bring some data. We've heard, for instance, from large municipalities, and I know there are small municipalities that are potentially in favor of this bill that would do exactly as the PUC has noted, remove a significant number of customers from existing utilities into their own, if you would, that are currently, those customers currently share some of the charges you mentioned. So I'm wondering if you could provide for us data that would tell us, say, on a per customer basis, what the difference in those types of costs are. In other words, for the IOUs, there are increased costs per ratepayer for the items that you suggested that they share the expense of versus current COUs. And maybe if in fact, as you mentioned, we're going to consider passing those costs on to a municipality that wishes to go on its own, would need to have some idea of what that looks like. So I don't know if you can get that for us. I'd appreciate it.
Representative Foster, sure. Let me try to get some data for you for the work session. And just to be clear, the data you're requesting is sort of a breakdown of what items would be included in a customer's bill for an investor-owned utility that are not currently included for those of a consumer-owned utility.
Yes, that would be the major part of that. Recognizing that for utilities, and I'll refer to, for instance, Madison Power and Electric. They're not the entire town of Madison, but they also have the opportunity to be connected to the ISO New England grid and so on and so forth. So there may be some factors here that you won't find in your cost analysis that we may need to consider as we go forward. But yes, basically the answer to your question back to me is yes.
Fair enough. Sure. Yep. I will get you the best information I can for the work session. Thanks.
Great. Are there other questions? Representative Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Corbin, for your testimony. I don't know if you heard in my testimony, my attempt to answer that concern, but I just to pose it as a question. It sounds like the commission believes that no proven harm probably would include any costs of any kind that are shifted, but that the commission would like to be certain about that and to have that clarification just to be sure that there's no confusion. And I indicated that I was fine with making that clarification. So for the work session, could you provide the language that you think the commission would be comfortable with to have those clear guidelines in place to the extent that no proven harm may not be sufficient?
Thanks, Representative Barry. Yeah, I think we'd be happy to try to work on that. And I'm thinking that might make sense to try to work with you as well offline to see, just make sure it's kind of meeting both objectives there.
That sounds great.
Great. Any other questions? We'll go on next to Neil Goldberg from the Maine Municipal Association. Neil?
Good afternoon. Senator Lawrence, Representative Barry, and members of the Energy, Utilities, and Technology Committee. My name is Neil Goldberg, and I am providing testimony neither for nor against LD 695 on behalf of MMA's Legislative Policy Committee. I really like the way that a previous individual, Ms. Stas, put it. If municipalities chose that they wanted municipal power districts, this is a tool to make that more streamlined. Our neither for nor against testimony today is largely based off of the lack of experience municipal officials have in this realm. There are some municipalities interested, and down the line, there probably will be more as things like solar panels become more affordable and some other complementary legislation. But at the moment, it is not quite commonplace. So to the extent that this bill gives the PUC kind of the authority to work as an intermediary, that would be great. We have seen examples in the past of it being difficult for municipalities to work with investor-owned utility companies. And so we would support that for this reason, but don't have too much practical past experience to add to it. Thank you for your time, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much, Neil. Jordan, have I reached everybody who wants to testify on this bill?
That's everyone who's signed up to testify. Yep.
Great. Okay. Well, I will declare the public hearing on this bill to be closed. What's the pleasure of the committee? Do you want to go back to that language review and deal with that before we end today? Thumbs up, thumbs down. I don't see Representative Barry still here, so I know he was very much part of that discussion. Representative Wadsworth?
I guess my preference would be that we could caucus that and to do it on Tuesday.
Okay.
Just have it caucus before Tuesday if possible.
So I will recognize a motion to table. And then we'll give an opportunity for people to caucus. And Deirdre, unfortunately, you can't move to table. Representative Cuddy.
I would make a motion to table.
It's been moved by Representative Cuddy to table. Is there a second? Seconded by Representative Wadsworth. Tabling motions are non-debatable. So all those in favor of tabling, please raise your hands. All those opposed? Representative Foster? Which side? We can't hear you.
I'm opposed.
You're opposed. Okay. I believe it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 to 1. So unfortunately, Representative Foster loses. Dan?
I assume Deirdre was going to try to tell you that it was already tabled, but
oh, it was?
Yes, I did want to note I did speak with the public advocate in the interim, and I know you didn't really want to take this up now, but in case it would be something you'd be interested in before caucusing. I believe he may have some input that might directly affect the decision that could be made on how to deal with that reorganization provision. So I know he had tried to reach out to Representative Berry, but he does have some input. But I suppose that could be done at a later date.
Well, it has been tabled, but that's good information for the caucuses. So we will go on. Is there anything else we need to do, Deirdre, before we run away?
Yeah, this is just a quick thing. So on Tuesday, I think it was, I don't even know what day it is. We did a language review and fiscal review for LD 507, which was the consumer protections for the solar customers. And there was an error that was discovered after that review in the fiscal note. It's not a huge thing. It doesn't change the numbers, but I have the revised fiscal note. So I thought while we were all here, I would just bring that up really quickly and explain that error so we can report that bill out. I'll just pull it up here. So the only error wasn't in any of the numbers, but it was in the staffing piece. And so the fiscal note that you reviewed on Tuesday said that it was to fund one staff attorney position and one senior consumer assistance specialist position. But the actuality of it was one staff attorney position and two senior consumer assistance specialists. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. I'll send you that revised fiscal note in an email. But before reporting it out, I thought I would just get that before you.
Nicole?
I had an unrelated question.
Okay. Anything on what Deirdre said before we go on to Nicole's unrelated question? Okay, let's go on to unrelated questions. Nicole?
Deirdre, can you remind me in particular, you had flagged with LD 251 a date change?
Oh, when I spoke this morning?
Yeah, did we need to do anything about that? Or did we do something about that and I missed it? The amendment as it stands now is just that it would report back on January 15th. And when they looked at the bill, they thought that the 30th would be more advantageous to them, but nobody acted on that when we reviewed it. So I just assumed everybody was okay with the 15th instead of the 30th. If you were to change it, I think based on reviewing the footage from Zoom, the date you had specified was 1/15. So that would have to be a reconsideration to change the date.
Representative Wadsworth?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, with looks like our session day next Thursday, I believe the 13th, it looks like that's getting pushed back a week.
Yeah.
Should we anticipate the committee will be working next Thursday?
Yes.
Okay. So probably Tuesday,
question?
Wednesday, Thursday, I assume.
Yes.
Okay.
Other questions? Seeing none, everybody have a good rest of the day, and we will see you. Is next Tuesday the first time we get together, Deirdre?
Yes.
We'll see you all next Tuesday. Anything before we go, Jordan? Okay.
Nothing from me.
Everybody.